Imagine winning a national fighting tournament with a prize so absurd it can grant you any wish in the world, and then discovering the tournament was never about the prize at all. It was a net, cast across the entire planet to find one specific boy, and the boy is you. So why would gods rig a high school martial arts contest just to flush out a cheerful teenager who fights for fun? Why does this one ordinary boy keep recovering from wounds that should kill him, learning techniques he was never taught, frightening beings far older and stronger than any human? Someone sealed something inside him a very long time ago, and by the end of this recap, you will know exactly why Jin Mori is, and is not, a high schooler. This is the God of High School, and I'm going to walk you through the whole story beginning to end. So let's get into it. Jin Mori is a Korean high schooler and a Taekwondo prodigy, relentlessly cheerful, monstrously strong, and almost entirely without malice. He picks fights the way other boys pick up hobbies, grinning the whole time, treating every opponent as a gift rather than an enemy. He lives with his grandfather, who trained him, and he has the unshakable, slightly maddening confidence of someone who has genuinely never lost. Then comes the invitation, a tournament called the God of High School, Go, open to fighters across the country, with a prize that sounds like a misprint. The winner is promised anything they want. Any wish, no fine print, no asterisks, a nationally televised brawl with a reward pulled straight out of a fairy tale. Mori does not care about the wish. He enters because the tournament promises the one thing he actually wants, which is stronger people to fight. But on his way in, almost by accident, he collects the two companions who will carry the entire story beside him. The first is Han De-wee, grim, disciplined, a karate fighter with a dead serious motivation. He is fighting for prize money to save a terminally ill friend, and he has no interest in Mori's grinning nonsense. And the second is Ymira, last heir to the near-extinct swordsmanship style, who has sworn to find a worthy husband to carry on her family's sword, a vow she states with such flat sincerity that it becomes one of the running jokes of the series. 3 teenagers, 3 completely different reasons, and 1 tournament. That is the show we think we are watching, a fighting tournament with a generous prize. Now remember that comfortable little frame, because the story is about to set it on fire. But the fists are not why this story works. Watch what happens when the fighting stops being fair, because as the tournament climbs through its rounds, the combatants stop looking quite human. People summon weapons out of nothing, they manifest spectral beasts and armored giants that fight alongside them, and the early matches that look like sport begin to reveal a hidden mechanic running underneath the whole world. It is called Charyeok, borrowed power. Charyeok is the engine of the God of High School, and it is a genuinely clever idea. A fighter forms a contract with a spirit, a demon, a deity, a being from the realm beyond, and borrows that entity's power into the human world. One fighter borrows a god of thunder, another borrows a great serpent or a knight, or a figure straight out of myth and scripture. The stronger the contracted being and the deeper the bond, the more devastating the borrowed power becomes. Humans, in other words, are fighting as the avatars of things much older and much larger than themselves. And the tournament organizers, the men in suits orchestrating all of this from the shadows, are watching the contestants Charyeok very, very carefully, because the Go was never a talent show. It is a recruitment drive, and a screening process run by an organization hunting for fighters worthy of a war the public knows nothing about. And at the center of that organization stands Park Moo-jin, the president of the tournament, a smiling, unreadable man of immense power, who seems to know far more about the Mori than a stranger should. He watches the boy the way a gambler watches a card he already knows is in the deck. Because here's the detail that breaks the frame. Jin Mori has no Charyeok. He borrows no god, contracts no demon, and yet he keeps winning against fighters who do. He keeps standing back up. He keeps improving mid-fight, copying movements, recovering from injuries at a speed that makes the men in suits lean forward in their chairs. He is not borrowing a power from the beyond. The power is already inside him, and someone somewhere is about to come looking for it. So the tournament escalates, and the world escalates with it. Mori, Dewey, and Mira advance together as a team and individually as monsters, through brackets that grow steadily more brutal. Dewey, who began as the disciplined skeptic, pays a savage price early on, losing an eye in one of the tournament's defining clashes, and rebuilding himself around raw, fundamental skill rather than flashy, borrowed power. Mira sharpens her family's dying sword style against opponents who would have ended her family for good. And Mori, beaming through all of it, keeps drifting closer to the truth he doesn't yet know he's carrying. But while the cameras point at the ring, the real story leaks in around the edges. There is a global organization behind the Go, and it has rivals. There is a secret society, there are hidden agendas stacking on hidden agendas, and there is a substance and a power source that several factions are willing to start a war over. The tournament, it turns out, is one front in a much larger conflict over who controls Charyeok itself, and over the boundary between the human world and the realms above it. Those realms now begin to bleed through. The fights that were once between high schoolers become fights against members of secret organizations, against monstrous experiments, against beings who borrow gods the way Mori's classmates borrowed schoolyard bravado. The scale ratchets upward relentlessly, from a national tournament to an international one, to a conflict that stops pretending to be a sport at all. And every time the danger spikes, something stirs in Jin Mori. His injuries close faster, his instincts run deeper than his training can explain, and when he is pushed to the edge, when the people he has decided to protect are genuinely threatened, a different presence flickers behind his cheerful eyes, older and colder and immeasurably more powerful. The boy keeps insisting he is just a high schooler who likes to fight, and the story keeps quietly disagreeing. But the tournament was never the point. Watch what happens when the story finally tells us who has been fighting under a borrowed name this entire time. The mythology of the god of high school draws openly and gleefully from Journey to the West, the classic tale of the Monkey King Sun Wukong, who rebelled against heaven itself. And the great reveal of the series is that the grinning, undefeated, Charyeokless boy at its center is not borrowing the Monkey King's power. He is the Monkey King. Jin Mori, the name, the high school life, the cheerful innocence, is a vessel. His true identity is Sun Wukong, the great sage, ruler of the Mount Huagua monkeys, and one of the 9 kings. The most powerful beings of the sage realm, the tier of existence that sits above ordinary gods and borrowed Charyeok alike. He was sealed, hidden, his memory and his monstrous strength locked away inside the body of a boy who simply believed he was human. And the man who sealed him, who betrayed and hid the Monkey King, then spent years watching over the boy who carried him, is Park Mu-jin, also known by the name Mubong, the president of the tournament, the smiling man who always knew which card was in the deck. This is the hinge the entire series swings on. Every borrowed power we have watched, every fighter calling down a thunder god or a demon or a saint, is suddenly recontextualized, because there is a being who does not borrow gods. He commands the realm they come from, the original loop of binding that once sealed Sun Wukong's strength. The headband Buddha forced upon him to punish his rebellion against heaven becomes a key image. A boy with a god, chained inside his own skull, and the chain coming loose. When Mori awakens to what he is, when the seal breaks and the cheerful high schooler remembers being the Monkey King, the story stops escalating and simply detonates. The tournament's human politics become a footnote. The genuine conflict is laid bare, a war between the sage realm, the heavenly realm, and the gods who rule them, with the rebel Monkey King at the heart of it, exactly as the old legend always promised. So who is Jin Mori really? He is the rebellion against heaven wearing a school uniform. Once the seal is broken, the god of high school goes fully mythic. The fights leave the arena and climb into the realms of gods, the 9 kings, the deities of the heavenly realm, ancient bargains and ancient betrayals, all of it converges. And the cheerful boy who entered a tournament for fun finds himself standing against heaven itself, just as Sun Wukong did in the story that inspired him. The absurd premise, a high schooler is secretly a god king who wars with the divine, is played here with complete commitment. And it works, for the same reason these stories always work when they work. We did not skip the climb. We met Mori as a grinning boy who loved a good fight. We watched him bleed for friends, lose and win, refuse to abandon Dewey and Mira, hold onto his fundamental decency through every escalation. So when the Monkey King unfolds out of him at full terrifying power, it does not feel like a cheat. It feels like the truth we were promised in the very first chapter, finally arriving. The conflict drives toward its final confrontation. Mori, now as Dan Mori, the awakened Monkey King, against Park Mubong, the man who sealed and betrayed him. It is the rebel against the warden, the legend against the man who tried to write him out of it. The fight is not merely physical. It is a reckoning with everything that was hidden, every life the boy lived not knowing what he was, and every god who treated the realms below as a chessboard. And in the middle of that final reckoning, the story plays its last card, the one that turns a martial arts brawl into something closer to scripture, because Sun Wukong, in the oldest version of the legend, does not stay a rebel forever. He becomes something more. He wins. Of course he wins. The Monkey King against the man who chained him was only ever going one way, but the series saves its strangest, most ambitious idea for the very end. It asks what being like this is for. In the final movement of the story, Jin Mori is revealed to be more than the Monkey King. He is identified with Maitreya, the future Buddha, the fifth and final Buddha of the current age, the one prophesied to return and restore the teaching when the old order has decayed. The boy who liked to fight is, at the deepest layer of the story, a force meant to bring the world back into balance. Having ended his battle, Mori reaches Nirvana, the heaven beyond the heavens, where Xuanzang, the monk from the old legend who also attained that state, lays a choice before him. He can become a true god, ascend fully, sever every tie to the human world he came from, and take his place overseeing all of creation, bringing balance to the universe as a spirit of heaven forever apart. Or he can remain bound to the world he loves, to Dawi and Mira, to the messy, ordinary mortal life of a boy who just wanted good fights and good friends. It is the same dilemma that closes so many of these legends, and the series treats it with real sincerity. The Monkey King's whole journey was a rebellion against being ruled by heaven. And now, heaven offers him a throne in it, at the price of everything that made him Jin Mori rather than Sun Wukong. The grandeur of godhood set against the small, irreplaceable warmth of belonging to people. What lingers when the final chapter closes after 11 years and over 560 chapters is that tension held in perfect balance. A god who began as a boy, a rebel offered the very heaven he rebelled against. A story that started as the most disposable premise imaginable, a high school fighting tournament, and ended by asking whether a being who has touched true divinity can still choose to be human. That is the trick the god of high school pulls. It dresses up as the dumbest, most fun kind of action story, and then, while you're grinning along with Mori, it quietly becomes a meditation on rebellion, sacrifice, and what godhood is even worth. The God of High School was written and drawn by Park Yong-ji, and ran on Natva Webtoon from April 2011 all the way to its conclusion in November 2022, reaching its finale at chapter 569 after more than a decade of weekly serialization. it became one of Manhwa's flagship titles, and one of the most internationally recognized action webtoons ever made, with an animated adaptation that carried Mori's grin to millions more. It is, in the best sense, a story that refuses to stay small. If you have ever wanted to watch the most over-the-top, gleefully ridiculous fighting tournament you can imagine slowly reveal itself as a war between gods, drawn with some of the most kinetic action panels in the medium, this is the one that commits to the bit, harder than any other. If this recap held you till the end, subscribe, because the Manhwa Recap Vault covers the stories that define the genre, and The God of High School is where the modern action webtoon learned to swing for heaven. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next recap.